From Studio 3B in New York, here is Jane Pauley.
Did your mother ever ask if you'd jump off a bridge because all the other kids were doing it? It's one of those phrases parents pass down generation after generation. But tonight's story about the power of peer pressure makes that, sadly, not just a rhetorical question. Can peer pressure drive someone to murder? Just how far will people go to please the crowd? As you'll see tonight, much farther than you'd ever think. Here's Dawn Fratangelo.
When it's least expected, you're elected, you're the star today. Smile, you're on Candid Camera.
This man finds himself in a strange predicament. So does this man. He's in an elevator facing front, but inexplicably, everyone else is facing the back. It's the dilemma presented by TV's Candid Camera 35 years ago, pitting individuality against the pull of group pressure.
He's very unhappy. You'll see him. He doesn't know whether to go inside and face front or outside and face back. Here's a fella with his hat on.
Over and over, the unsuspecting TV stars all reacted the same way, like sheep.
A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions.
Although it was just for laughs, Candid Camera also raised serious questions about conformity for all of us. Would you be strong enough to stand up for yourself if you're a minority of one? What is conformity?
Conformity is when we give in to the group.
Social psychologist Dr. Anthony Pretcanis has studied conformity for 2 decades.
On some occasions, on many occasions, it can be very, very difficult and very, very negative. So, for instance, when the group is wrong and you're right, conformity is bad.
How powerful is the pull of negative group pressure? We wanted to know. So Dateline enlisted Professor Pretcanis and his psychology students at the University of California, Santa Cruz to replicate Dr. Solomon Asch's classic 1950s conformity study. They did what Asch did. Design a simple exercise matching the line on the left with the one of identical length on the right, and then have the students who were plants give intentionally wrong answers, claiming, for example, line 1 on this card is the right match.
1. 1. 1. 1.
1.
The subjects, always in seat 6, are then faced with the experiment's fundamental question: conform by giving answers they know to be absurdly wrong, or defy the group and give answers they know to be correct.
Go ahead.
And there was one more part of the experiment, designed to draw the subjects in and make the exercise more convincing.
2.
Initially, the plants actually give the correct answers.
2.
2.
2.
2.
At least the first few times.
We have consensus.
But as the rounds continue and the plants do give those wrong answers, try playing along. Watch these subjects, who were told they were part of a visual perception experiment, respond to the mounting pressure of the group solidarity. And ask yourself, what would you do? We'll start with Marie. As she hears the clearly wrong answers,
1.
1.
she glances at the leader, seemingly for help. Yet, she sticks to her guns and defies the group.
3.
And keeps disagreeing.
3. 3.
3.
Although her resistance is never easy.
1.
As Marie stares intently at this card, she can't believe her ears.
1.
1.
1.
The urge to join the group and conform builds with each wrong answer, and she suffers for every right answer she gives.
2.
What does she finally do?
3.
3.
3.
2.
She would not conform.
You can see the worry on her face, the concern. Very painful to stand up to the group, but she stood up to the group.
It was hard for her to do that.
Yes, because the pressure of I might be wrong, I might be the fool here.
There was a lot of pressure in that room. There was a lot of tension that I felt. I can see where somebody would buckle and just lose it.
And you didn't like being different?
No, but I didn't want to be wrong either.
Up next, Brian. What will he do?
1. 1.
The first few times the plants pick the obviously incorrect line, Brian confidently defies the group.
1. 3.
Confident because just look at the card. Of course, the only logical answer is 3. And this card, nobody could possibly say anything but 3 is the correct answer here as well, right? Just watch.
2.
Notice Brian's eyes start to droop, and listen to his voice get softer.
3.
When the group gets it wrong again, and again.
3.
3. 2.
For 4 rounds now, he's been fighting the good fight against conformity.
3.
3.
But with the pressure mounting,
3.
3. 3.
he just can't fight anymore.
3.
And in succeeding rounds with Brian continuing to give answers he knows to be wrong,
2. 2.
he only gets sadder and softer.
3.
By the final trial, he's a thoroughly
1.
beaten man.
1.
I gave up.
1.
There were times when I didn't even look at the lines and said the answer. I became quiet, decided that I wasn't playing the game right, so I just played along.
One of the participants in our demonstration was a bit different. This man, George, older and an artist.
Basically, I consider myself to be a nonconformist.
And one of the student plants sized him up exactly that way.
I felt he would take one look at us and say, bunch of kids, and then go his own way.
Would he?
2.
2.
2. 3.
He holds out for 2 rounds. But what happens on the very next round?
3.
3.
3. 3. 3.
A total reversal. And what about the next round?
3. 3. 3.
George, it so happens, not only goes along, he dives in head first.
1.
He gives wrong answers with an air of total certainty.
3.
I didn't want to be different anymore. The pressure got to me, and I caved in.
3. 3.
Even though I knew it wasn't the truth, it made me feel more comfortable.
Of all the subjects, George conformed the most, the last 9 times in a row.
I'm the faculty running this experiment.
Dr. Predkanis acknowledges that despite decades of research by social psychologists, there is no way of predicting with certainty what George or the other subjects would do.
It's important that we walk into situations and say, hey, I'm a human being. It could happen to me.
In the conformity test you just saw, nearly 60% of the subjects, 9 of 16, succumbed to the group pressure. These results, a half-century later, essentially support the findings in Dr. Solomon Asch's original 1950 experiment. And today, in everyday life, all of us are influenced by group pressure. Whether it's in fashion trends, doing the wave at sporting events, or following the herd in business.
This way? I don't know.
As this TV commercial humorously suggests. Going along to get along is one thing, but what if you were ordered to conform and do something against your better nature? Obedience to authority is another kind of conformity, and 35 years ago it was tested to its limits in science's most controversial and shocking conformity experiment ever.
Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
It's called the Milgram Obedience Study, and what you're about to see has rarely been seen on network television.
Just how much pain will one person inflict on another in the name of conformity? When we return.
Returning to our story, we've seen how peer pressure can get people to give an answer they know is wrong simply because that's the one everyone else gave. It's almost funny. But what you're about to witness is not funny. It's footage you've probably never seen before. And as you watch, ask yourself, what would you do? Here again, Dawn Fratangelo.
What are the outer limits of conformity? Historically, it's the Holocaust, where a single authority figure, Adolf Hitler, influenced countless others to act against reason and good conscience.
Here at Yale University in the early 1960s, psychology professor Stanley Milgram wondered whether the Holocaust was a uniquely German experience, or, under similar circumstances, would any one of us have the same capacity for evil?
That experiment in the history of social psychology was earth-shaking.
Here's how the Milgram experiment worked. Subjects like this man were told they were part of a study on memory and punishment. Punishment they would deliver to this man from this ominous-looking machine.
This machine generates electric shocks.
The subjects were told they'd have to give the man shocks after every wrong answer in the memory test, and the voltage would increase from slight at 15 to intense at 255 to the unimaginable at 450. But what the subjects didn't know was that the machine wasn't real, and it wasn't a memory test at all. It was a test of obedience to see if everyday people would inflict pain on others just because an authority figure told them to.
You want to step right in here, Lou?
The subjects also didn't know that these two people, the man in the lab coat who was running the experiment and the man receiving the shocks, were Milgram accomplices. The man in the lab coat, really a young high school teacher, gained instant credibility with subjects he had never met before, simply by acting in charge and sounding and looking like a scientist.
And this electrode paste is to provide a good contact to avoid any blister or burn.
And there was more scripted dialogue, always with the subjects listening in, that raised the stakes even higher.
About 2 years ago, I was in the Veterans Hospital, and while there, they detected a heart condition.
So now, Dr. Milgram had set up a crisis of conscience, pitting fear of harming someone against orders to obey.
My role was to give commands to the subjects to get them to go to the end of the machine.
The man in the lab coat, John Williams, 35 years later.
When you first saw that machine, did it ever occur to you that someone would go to the very end?
No.
This one will be 195 volts. The correct one. Let me out of here. Slow. Dance. Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out.
195 volts. Anguish cries to stop. And they're not the first pleas for help. By this time, the subject believes he has shocked the man with the phony heart condition 13 times.
Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me.
Go on.
Let me out.
Let's look at that again. And this time, pay attention to the subject's struggle as he feels the weight of his conscience.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out.
He looks back to the authority figure, John Williams, for relief, but doesn't get it.
Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me.
Go on.
Let me out.
But instead of walking away, he tells Williams he won't be responsible, allowing him to feel less guilty, yet still obey.
That is incorrect. This will be at 3:30. The correct phrase is rich boy. Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out, I tell you. Let me out of here. Let me out of here. You have no right to hold me here. The next phrase is fast. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out. Bird, car, train, plane.
Silence. Is the man unconscious? Dead? Why won't the subject just stop?
Continue.
Because of the commands to obey.
That is incorrect. This will be 3:45.
More silence, putting even more pressure on the subject. Should he follow more commands or finally follow his conscience?
I'm not going to go any further.
It's absolutely essential that you continue.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it, though.
You had no other choice.
I have a choice. I'm not going to go ahead with it.
This subject finally stopped, but only after blood-curdling screams and deadly silence. In all, he made the decision to inflict pain on a fellow human being 23 different times. But that subject didn't go as far as most. Amazingly, nearly 2/3 of Milgram's subjects, from a laborer to a social worker to a corporate executive, went all the way. That surprised Milgram and dozens of psychiatrists who had predicted that only 1 in 1,000 would obey to the very end. Which on this Milgram shock machine is past intense, past danger, all the way to a place seemingly too painful and perilous for words.
That's disturbing.
We thought so. I thought so.
And so did Stanley Milgram, who was so worried that no one would believe his results that he filmed the study on the very last day as proof. Proof, he concluded, that just like in Nazi Germany, any one of us could put blind obedience over conscience.
The experiment raised another issue as well. Was it in itself cruel and possibly damaging? What was the impact on the people who were studied, those who obeyed orders to inflict pain? Concerns about that issue prompted the psychological community to impose strict ethical standards on research in an effort to protect subjects. However, Milgram said 84% of the subjects in his controversial experiment told him they were glad they took part.
So let's sit back, look, learn, and laugh with Candid Camera.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a Candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the Candid subject. Here comes the Candid Camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. You're going to see a fellow who fights a little bit to withstand the group pressure now. He'll express his discomfort in the way he looks and the way he wiggles a little bit, but watch. He's right in the groove now. The elevator hasn't budged, but the doors open a moment later, and this we find. He's very unhappy. You'll see him. He doesn't know whether to go inside and face front or outside and face back. But he's one of the group now. Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice They take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.